Evan Steele lived far from everyone in a small repair outpost on a dry desert moon. His days were quiet, almost boring. He fixed farming machines, cleaned tools, and talked to no one except his old service drone. Most nights were silent, with only the soft sound of the wind sliding over the sand. But one night everything changed. It began with a single knock, a soft, weak knock that did not sound human. Evan froze in place, his tools slipped from his hand and hit the metal floor with a loud clink. No one ever came here, there were no neighbors for many kilometers, no travelers passed through this area at night, so who was knocking on his door in the darkness? The knock came again, harder this time. Evan took a slow breath. He walked to the door, unlocked it, and pulled it open a little. At first he saw nothing, just the endless desert and the cold stars shining above. Then something moved near his feet. A shape, small, shaking and struggling, slowly leaned forward. It was a woman, but not human. Her skin had a faint silver tone, and her eyes glowed softly in the dark like moonlight. She was holding a small child in her arms. The child looked even weaker than she did. "Please, help," she whispered before collapsing on the ground. Evan's mind raced. Helping aliens in this sector was forbidden. The local raider clans controlled the area, and they killed anyone who protected outsiders, but he could not ignore the way the woman trembled or how her child clung to her. He stepped out, lifted both of them gently, and carried them inside. The woman's breathing was shallow, the child's face was pale and dry. They looked like they had been running for days without water. Evan placed them on a cot and grabbed a bottle of purified water. He gave it carefully to the woman. She drank slowly, with shaking hands, then she gave some to her child. When she finally found her voice, she whispered, "They will come. They will kill us. They will kill you too." Evan knelt beside her. "Who will come?" he asked softly. "What happened to you?" The woman looked toward the door as if she expected it to burst open at any moment. "Raiders," she breathed. "Cruel men, hunters. They want us dead." Evan felt a jolt of fear. He knew the raiders, everyone feared them, they ruled the desert with fire and violence. But why would they chase a mother and her small child with such intensity? The woman hesitated as if she did not want to say more. "We escaped," she finally whispered. "We saw something they want hidden." Before Evan could ask what she meant, the child grabbed his sleeve. The child's eyes were wide and full of fear. "Please don't let them take us," the little one said softly. Evan felt something shift inside him. He had lived alone for years, he avoided trouble, he avoided danger, but now, looking at this helpless mother and her frightened child, he knew he could not send them back outside. He stood up and locked the door. "You're safe here," he said, trying to sound confident. "No one will hurt you." But even as he said the words, he heard a faint sound outside, a distant hum in the sky, soft but growing louder. He walked to the window and looked up. In the far distance, beyond the sand dunes, he saw small lights moving in the night sky. They were not stars, they were ships, raider ships, flying low and searching the ground with sharp beams of light. His throat tightened. They were coming, they were already close. The woman sat up suddenly, fear in her glowing eyes. "They found our trail," she whispered. "We must hide." Evan thought fast. He guided them into his workshop, where he kept old machines and metal storage crates. He cleared a small space behind a pile of tool cabinets and gave them blankets to cover themselves. "Stay quiet," he warned gently. "Do not make any sound." The woman nodded and held her child close. The small one pressed their face into her chest, trying not to cry. Evan stepped outside the workshop and checked his perimeter sensors. His heart sank. The screen showed multiple heat signatures approaching, maybe 20 or more. The raiders were spreading out, searching every abandoned building in the area, and they were coming straight toward his outpost. He returned to the workshop and whispered, "They're near." The woman squeezed her child's hand. "I am sorry," she said softly. "We did not mean to bring danger to your home." Evan shook his head. "No," he said firmly. "You needed help and I helped." Before she could reply, a sudden violent knock echoed through the outpost. This time it was not soft or weak, it was heavy, cold, and full of threat. A deep voice shouted from outside, "Open the door, human, we know someone is hiding inside." The child gasped. The mother held her breath. Evan stood completely still. The outpost walls felt too thin, the air felt too tight. Another loud knock shook the door. The raiders had arrived. And Evan had only seconds left to decide what he would do. The door shook again under the force of another heavy knock. Evan felt the vibration through the metal floor. The raiders were getting impatient, and when raiders grew impatient, people died. He moved quietly to the control panel beside the door and shut off the lights. Shadows filled the outpost. The only glow came from the machines humming softly in the workshop. Evan whispered to himself, "Think, Evan, think fast." He hurried back to the workshop. where the alien woman, Saris, and her child, Leary, hid behind stacked storage crates. Their glowing eyes were wide with terror. Saris whispered, "They will break in, they always break in." Evan crouched beside them. "I will try to talk to them first," he said, keeping his voice steady. "You stay hidden no matter what happens." Leary clung to Saris's arm, trembling silently. Saris nodded, but fear shook her hands. She looked at Evan with desperate eyes. "You should not risk your life for us," she whispered. "You do not know who they are." "I know enough," Evan said, "and I'm not letting them take you." The loud knock came again, followed by the voice of the raider leader, cold and sharp. "Human, we know fugitives came this way. Open the door or we will open it for you." Evan swallowed hard. Raiders never bluffed. If they said they would break the door, they meant it. He pressed a button on his wrist tablet, activating the front camera. On the screen he saw 5 armed raiders standing outside. Their armor was covered in dark dust, their weapons glowing with a faint blue light, and behind them, more figures spread out across the sand, scanning the area with portable sensors. They were hunting, and they were close to catching their prey. Evan took a breath, unlocked the door, and opened it just a crack, enough to show his face but not the inside of the outpost. "What do you want?" he asked, keeping his tone calm and confused. The raider leader stepped forward. His eyes were cold yellow and a scar cut across his cheek. "We are looking for 2 fugitives, a woman and a child," he said. "They passed through this area?" Evan shook his head slowly. "I've seen no one," he said. "No travelers come out this far." The leader smirked. "Do not lie to me, human," he growled. "Our scanners detected movement near your outpost." "That must be wildlife," Evan replied, trying to sound annoyed. "Lots of desert animals come out at night." One of the raiders pushed forward and shoved the door wide open. "We'll search the place," he said. Before Evan could stop him, 3 raiders marched inside, scanning every corner with their weapons raised. Their heavy boots thudded on the metal floor. Evan followed them, trying to keep them away from the workshop. "There's nothing here," he insisted. "Just tools and old machines." But the raiders were not listening. They sniffed the air like predators. Their senses were sharp, too sharp. One raider paused near the workshop door, his head tilted as if he heard something. Evan's heart stopped. Inside the workshop, Saris held Leary tightly, trying to keep the child from making a sound, but Leary's breathing was fast and shaky, and every small gasp echoed inside the metal crates. The raider's hand reached for the workshop door handle. Evan knew he had only a second to act. He grabbed his old repair drone controller from his pocket and pressed a button. Outside the outpost, a loud crash echoed as the drone purposely fell from the roof, making a metallic bang across the sand. All the raiders jerked their heads toward the noise. "What was that?" one shouted. "Someone's trying to escape," another yelled. The raider leader snapped his hand forward. "Outside. Check it." 4 raiders rushed out of the outpost, weapons ready, looking for the escaping figure they imagined. The outpost became quiet again, except for the humming of machines. Evan let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. He slowly moved between the remaining raider and the workshop, blocking the raider's view. "You see," Evan said, keeping his voice steady, "probably just old junk falling apart." The raider stared at him for a long moment, eyes narrowing as if he could sense something wrong, but after a tense silence he turned and followed the others outside. Evan quickly shut the door and sealed it, his hands shaking. He hurried back to Saris and Leary. They looked terrified yet relieved. "You saved us," Saris whispered, her voice shaking. "Not yet," Evan said, checking the security feed again. His heart dropped when he saw what the raiders were doing now. They were setting up portable scanners around the outpost, machines that could detect heartbeats, heat signatures, and even breathing patterns. They were preparing for a deeper search. Saris saw the worry in Evan's face. "They will find us," she whispered. "These men, they do not stop." Evan rubbed his forehead, thinking fast. "There must be a way," he muttered. "There has to be something we can do." Saris reached into her torn clothing and pulled out a small, crystalline device. It glowed faintly with pale blue light. "This is why they hunt us," she said. "This crystal holds their secrets. If we reach the Galactic Patrol, the raiders' whole network will fall." Evan stared at the small device, feeling the weight of its importance. He realized this wasn't just about hiding 2 refugees, this was something larger, something dangerous. He looked at Saris and Leary. "I won't let them take you," he said firmly, "but we need a plan." Outside, the raiders began chanting something in their harsh language. One voice rose above the others. "Bring the explosives," the leader ordered. "We break open the humans' walls tonight." Evan's blood turned cold. Time was running out. The thin metal walls of his outpost would not survive a direct blast. He turned to Saris. "We need to move now." Saris nodded, clutching Leary close. Where will we go? Evan didn't know the full answer yet, but he knew staying here meant death. He grabbed his toolkit, checked the back exit, and whispered, "We run before they blow this place apart." Behind them, outside the outpost, the raiders lit their explosives. Night was about to explode into fire. The night outside Evan's outpost was no longer quiet. Flames from the raiders' torches flickered across the sand, their shadows stretched tall and twisted, moving like hungry beasts searching for prey. Inside, Evan moved quickly through the workshop, gathering tools, wires, and his portable shield generator. The machine was old and unreliable, but it was better than nothing. Saris held Leary close, the child shaking from fear. Leary clung to her mother's arm and whispered, "Mama, they're coming." Evan nodded. "Yes, they are," he said, "but we're not giving up." The floor shook beneath their feet. A loud thud rattled the outpost. The raiders were testing the walls, placing charges, preparing to blast their way inside. Saris's voice trembled. "They will kill all of us. They want the crystal. They will not stop." Evan grabbed his emergency bag and strapped it on. "We're leaving," he said. "There's a back exit through the old mining tunnel. It's small, but raiders can't enter from that side." Before they could move, a terrifying sound echoed through the outpost wall. A deep metallic crack, followed by pieces of metal falling to the ground. The raiders had begun breaking in. Evan rushed to the back door and scanned it with his tablet. The lock mechanism sparked. It was jammed from years of dust. "Come on, not now," he muttered, banging the control panel. Another explosion sent dust shaking from the ceiling. Leary covered her ears and cried softly. Saris held the child tightly, trying to calm them, but her own eyes were full of fear. Evan kicked the panel, and the door finally slid open with a loud hiss. Cool desert air rushed in. "Go," he said. "Go now." Saris grabbed Leary's hand and stepped toward the exit. But before they could leave, another blast boomed through the outpost. The front wall bent inward, sparks flying. A voice shouted from outside, "Break it down. The fugitives are inside." Evan felt his heart pound. They had only moments left. He guided Saris and Leary out into the narrow mining tunnel behind the outpost. The tunnel was dark and cramped, but it was their only escape. As they stepped into the shadows, they heard the final blow. The front entrance of the outpost collapsed, and heavy boots stormed inside. Raiders had entered. Evan urged Saris forward, "Keep moving. Don't stop." But the tunnel was old and unstable. Rocks crumbled from the ceiling as they moved deeper inside. Dust filled the air, making it hard to breathe. Saris pressed Leary's face against her shoulder to protect the child from the falling debris. Evan used his flashlight to guide them, the narrow beam cutting through the dark. Behind them, they heard the raiders inside the outpost, roaring in anger as they realized their targets were gone. "They escaped through the back," one of them shouted. "Find the tunnel," the leader roared. Evan pushed faster. "We need to reach the next exit before they do." But fate turned against them. Halfway through the tunnel, a large boulder blocked the way forward. The path was sealed. Saris gasped, "We're trapped." Evan examined the rock. "No, not trapped," he said, "just delayed." He pulled out his mining laser from his bag. The tool was small but powerful enough to cut through stone. He turned it on, a thin red beam glowing at the tip, and began slicing through the boulder. Sparks showered the ground as the rock slowly melted away. But the sound was loud, too loud. The raiders heard it. In the distance, their footsteps echoed through the tunnel entrance. The leader's voice bounced between the stone walls. "They're in the tunnels. Hurry." Evan cut faster, sweat running down his forehead. His hands shook, but he didn't stop. Saris knelt beside Leary, whispering comforting words, trying to drown out the raiders' footsteps getting closer and closer. The laser flickered. Its battery was nearly dead. Evan's heart sank. One more cut, one more slice. The laser died, but the boulder cracked. A small opening formed, just big enough for a child. Saris stared in fear. "Leary can go through, but we cannot." Evan looked back toward the tunnel entrance. The raiders' voices were loud now, only seconds away. He made a harsh decision. "Leary goes first," he said, "then I make the opening bigger manually." Saris hesitated, tears filling her eyes, but she nodded. She lifted Leary and gently pushed the child through the small gap. On the other side, Leary reached out and whispered, "Mama, hurry." Evan grabbed a heavy metal rod from his bag and struck the boulder again and again, cracking it wider. His arms ached, but he didn't stop. The raiders reached the tunnel entrance. Flashlights cut through the dark, weapons raised. "There. I see them," one raider shouted. Saris squeezed through the enlarged opening, her clothes ripping as she forced herself through. She reached Leary and pulled the child close. Evan swung the metal rod again, widening the hole enough for him to pass. But before he could crawl through, a plasma bolt hit the stone near his shoulder, sending shards flying. The raiders had opened fire. Evan ducked and squeezed through the hole, scraping his back and arms on the sharp edges. On the other side, he rolled onto the ground, breathing hard. Saris reached for him. Come. They're almost here. Evan grabbed her hand and stood up. They ran out of the tunnel into the open desert night. The stars shone brightly above them, but the sound of raider boots and weapons echoed behind them. They were not safe yet. A loud roar filled the night air as the raiders climbed through the tunnel opening. Their hunt was far from over. And now the real chase had begun. Evan, Saris, and little Leary ran across the open desert. The cold night wind whipped against their faces. Their feet sank into the soft sand with every step. But they didn't stop. Behind them, the raiders' shouts grew louder, their flashlights waving wildly as they climbed out of the tunnel. Evan looked back, breathing hard. They're gaining on us, he said. We need cover? Saris pointed ahead. There, she whispered, old storage shelters. A row of abandoned metal pods lay half buried in the sand, rusted and forgotten from an old mining project. They ran toward them, ducking inside the closest one. The pod was cracked and dusty, but it offered shade and a moment to breathe. Leary gasped for air, tears on their cheeks. Saris hugged the child tightly, trying to calm them. Evan crouched near the entrance, peeking out. They're spreading out, he said, searching the dunes. Saris touched Evan's arm gently. You saved us again, she whispered, but they will not stop until they kill us. Evan turned to her. Why? He asked. Why hunt you so hard? Saris reached into her clothes again and pulled out the glowing crystal. It flickered with a cold blue light, stronger than before. This, she said softly, this is their greatest fear. Evan stared at it. What's inside? Proof, Saris answered. Recordings, documents, everything. The raiders are part of a slavery ring across 3 star systems. Evan felt anger rise inside him. He had heard rumors of missing settlers, stolen workers, destroyed villages, but he never knew who was behind it. Saris continued, I used to work in one of their bases, cleaning floors. They ignored me. They thought I was nothing, but I listened, I saw, I collected evidence. Leary looked up at Evan with wide, scared eyes. We ran because Mama wanted to stop them. Evan clenched his jaw. And you're right, you can stop them. Saris shook her head. Not alone, the patrol needs to see this crystal, but they will not come here without a signal. Evan nodded. Then we make a signal. He opened his emergency bag and pulled out several small devices. Metal plates, wires, and power cells. What is that? Saris asked. A field beacon, Evan replied. If I modify it, it can send a distress call far enough to reach a patrol ship. But, Saris whispered, won't the raiders hear it too? Yes, Evan said, they will. Saris looked at him with fear. Then they will come for us even faster. I know, Evan said, that's why we're not staying here. Evan worked quickly, attaching wires, twisting bolts, and forcing components together. The beacon sparked once, twice, then hummed softly. It's ready, he said, but we need a safer place to send it. He looked toward the dark horizon, a small ridge rising in the distance. The ridge, he said, higher ground means stronger signal. Before they could move, a sudden blast shook the sand outside the metal pod. A plasma bolt scorched the ground only a few meters away. The raiders had spotted them. Go! Evan shouted, grabbing the beacon. Saris lifted Leary into her arms, and they ran again, dodging blasts that lit up the night like falling stars. The ground shook as the raiders advanced, shouting and firing in their harsh language. Evan pushed himself harder, forcing his legs to move even though they felt like iron. The ridge wasn't far now, just a bit more. They reached the bottom of the ridge, climbing upward over loose rocks. The raiders followed closely behind, climbing with terrifying speed. At the top, Evan set the beacon down and knelt beside it, his fingers trembling as he activated the signal module. Come on, he whispered. Work? The beacon beeped softly, then glowed bright blue. A pulse shot into the sky like a small shooting star, disappearing into the darkness of space. Saris gasped. You did it? We're not done, Evan said. We have to defend this spot until someone hears us. He pulled out his portable shield generator and slammed it into the ground. The device flickered, then projected a weak shimmering barrier around them. Leary touched the glowing air and whispered, Pretty? Evan forced a smile. It will protect us, for a while. But the shield was old, barely functional. And the raiders reached the ridge. The leader stepped forward, his armor glowing with red symbols. He raised his weapon and pointed it at Evan. You should not have interfered, human, he growled. Give us the woman, the child, and the crystal. Evan stood in front of Saris and Leary. His voice trembled but he did not move aside. "No," he said quietly, "you're not taking them." The raider leader smirked. "Then you die first." He raised his weapon, firing a blast that slammed into the shield barrier with a bright flash. The shield flickered violently, each shot weakening it further. Saris held Leary close, whispering prayers in her native language. Evan picked up a heavy metal rod, his only weapon, and braced himself. The raiders fired again and again. The shield hissed and sparked, shrinking with every impact. Then, with a final crack, the shield shattered, the energy field collapsed like broken glass. The raider leader stepped forward, grinning. "It's over?" He aimed at Saris. "Give me the crystal or I end the child." Saris froze, her hands shaking. She looked at Evan with wide, helpless eyes. Evan's heart pounded in his chest. He had no shield, no weapon strong enough, only a metal rod and his fear. But he stepped forward anyway. "You'll have to go through me," he said. The raider leader laughed darkly. "Gladly?" He rushed forward, blade drawn. And Evan met him head-on. The clash lit up the ridge. And the battle for their lives began. The raider leader charged at Evan with a roar. His blade glowed with red energy, cutting through the cold desert air. Evan held his metal rod tightly, his hands shaking. He had no real combat training, no armor, no special weapons. But he had something the raider didn't expect. Courage? The first strike came fast. Evan blocked it with the rod, sparks flying. The impact sent pain shooting through his arms and he stumbled back. But he didn't fall. Saris held Leary behind her, shielding the child with her own body. Her eyes stayed on Evan, full of fear and hope. The raider swung again, aiming for Evan's chest. Evan dodged and countered, hitting the raider's shoulder. The blow wasn't strong enough to stop him, but it surprised the raider. Humans usually ran, they didn't fight back. The raider snarled, "You think you can protect them?" Evan breathed hard, sweat running down his face. "I don't think," he said. "I know." The raider attacked harder, faster. His blade sliced across the metal rod, cutting a deep glowing line into it. Evan blocked desperately, stumbling on the rocky ground. Another raider climbed the ridge, then another, soon 3 more were approaching, weapons ready. Saris gasped, "Evan?" Evan looked behind him, knowing he couldn't let the leader break past him. If the raiders reached Saris and Leary, everything would be over. He gripped the rod tighter, a plan formed in his mind, reckless, dangerous, maybe impossible. But he tried anyway. As the leader raised his blade for a killing strike, Evan stepped forward instead of back. He slammed the metal rod onto the raider's wrist with all his strength. The raider howled and dropped the blade. Before he could recover, Evan dove at him, tackling him hard to the ground. The two rolled across the ridge, punching and grappling in the dirt. The raider, stronger and heavier, pinned Evan down. His hands closed around Evan's throat, crushing. Evan gasped for air, spots of light filling his vision. Sarah screamed, "No!" She grabbed a handful of sand and threw it into the raider leader's eyes. The raider roared, blinded for a moment, and loosened his grip. Evan pulled free, coughing. The raider wiped his eyes just in time to see Evan grab the fallen blade. Evan swung it in a wide arc, striking the raider across the chest. The armor split, sparks flying. The raider fell back with a violent shout, collapsing onto the sand. But the other raiders were already climbing closer. 2 aimed their weapons at Saris and Leary. Evan stepped in front of them, raising the blade. "You want them?" he shouted. "Come and take them." The raiders snarled and fired. Evan blocked the first shot with the blade, but the second blast hit the ground near his feet, knocking him off balance. Saris reached into her clothes and pulled out the crystal. It glowed brighter now, pulsing like a heartbeat. She turned to Leary and whispered something Evan couldn't hear. Then she held the crystal up high. The raiders froze, their eyes widened in fear and anger. "Stop her," one of them yelled. But it was too late. The crystal released a loud humming sound. Energy rippled through the air. A bright beam shot into the sky, stronger than Evan's beacon signal, almost like a flare of truth. Evan shielded his eyes. The raiders stumbled back, startled by the sudden energy surge. Saris whispered, "Now they will see the truth." The raider leader, wounded but alive, forced himself up, rage burning in his eyes. "You fool," he shouted at Saris. "You just exposed us all." He lifted his weapon to finish her. But a thunderous sound filled the sky. Engines, heavy and powerful. A patrol ship broke through the clouds, its lights shining like a small sun. The blue markings of the Galactic patrol glowed across its hull. Evan stared in shock, his breath catching in his throat. "They came," Saris whispered, tears in her eyes. "The patrol, they came." The raiders panicked, some turning to flee, others raising their weapons, but it was already too late. Spotlights hit the ridge, blinding the raiders. A deep, commanding voice echoed through a speaker. "Drop your weapons. You are surrounded." More lights appeared as smaller patrol drones descended, forming a circle around the raiders. The raider leader bared his teeth. "This isn't over," he growled. But it was. Patrol officers dropped from the ship on gravity harnesses, landing with perfect precision. They surrounded the raiders, forcing them to their knees, binding their arms with magnetic restraints. One officer approached Evan. "Are you the one who sent the distress signal?" Evan nodded, exhausted, breathing hard. "Yes." The officer turned to Saris. "And you carried the crystal." Saris lifted the glowing shard. "I have proof of their crimes." The officer took the crystal gently. "You saved many lives by bringing this to us." Saris smiled weakly. Leary hugged her tightly. The raider leader glared at Evan as the patrol dragged him away. "Human, this changes nothing." Evan stared back. "It changes everything." When the raiders were finally secured and taken aboard the ship, the officer returned to Evan, Saris, and Leary. "You three should come with us," the officer said. "You're safe now?" Evan looked at Saris. "You and Leary will be okay?" Saris nodded. "Thanks to you," she whispered. "Humans are braver than stories say." Evan smiled, a tired but warm smile. As they stepped onto the patrol ship, Leary took Evan's hand and whispered, "You saved us." Evan looked out at the desert as the ship lifted into the sky. The place where he once lived in silence and loneliness was now far below, small and distant. Sarah spoke softly. "You didn't have to help us, but you did." Evan answered, "That's what humans do." And as the ship rose higher into the stars, one truth echoed across the silence of space. Humanity protects those who cannot protect themselves, even when the galaxy turns hostile. And sometimes, one human is enough to change everything.